Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at the first 3 issues of the Nemesis The Warlock 7-issue Necro series, published by Eagle Comics in 1984 and 1985. I'm splitting this up into 2 because these comics are very dense. They were reprinted from 2000 AD. Nemesis the Warlock started appearing there in 1980. And if you've ever read 2000 AD comics, they're like super compressed comics. I mean, they're 4 or 5 page stories, and they cram a lot of story and characters into every little story. So this is a lot of stuff in these. And Eagle Comics was responsible, probably the first publisher to bring English comics to the American market, all 2000 AD stuff. I think it was owned by IPC, the guys who put out 2000 AD. And I was collecting all of them as soon as they came out. Judge Dredd, that's the first time I read Judge Dredd, loved it. But man, when Nemesis the Warlock came out, this comic just blew me away. I must have been like 16, 17. I'd never read anything quite like it. And you could tell just by looking at these covers just how it's crazy. It's a really bizarro comic. So much fun, though. So, the artist for all of these is Kevin O'Neill. And he did new covers for these American reprints. Look at this great cover. So this is Nemesis. Probably one of the most unique character designs in comic book history. Maybe all of history. It's such a weird design. Like, I'm not even sure what's going on with his head. It's like a horse has been fused with an anvil, maybe a little bit of a Wurlitzer jukebox thrown in. I don't know what the hell's going on. It's just nuts. But it's fucking cool looking. Nemesis looks great. We have a little page here, a little introduction to Nemesis from the editor. And we start off with the very first Nemesis story, which actually wasn't technically a Nemesis the Warlock strip. 2000 AD was going to have this series called I think it was called Rock Comics or something like that. And each little story would be totally different based on a rock song that was popular of the day. So they took that original logo out, that said Rock Comics, and this first one is based on Going Underground by the Jam. And they had no idea that the characters they created would go on for, 50 years, 40 years plus. It was just a one-off. It was supposed to be a one-off. And it just shows how great Pat Mills is as a writer. Just for this one little 4 or 5 page story, he just puts all this amazing world building in and these great characters. And the readers responded and demanded more, even though there wasn't supposed to be. This first page is, I believe, a pinup from a later issue. So Kevin O'Neill does all the art in this. And apparently, according to Grand Comic Database, and I think just in this first issue, he totally reorganized the original material, drew tons of new panels, jumbled everything around so it would fit the American comic book dimensions better. The other issues are just reprints of the actual pages. So here's our villain, Torquemada, the Chief Terminator. But in our first story here, I'm sorry, I should also mention Kevin O'Neill did all the colors on these too. So what I was saying was, in this first story, Torquemada is just the chief of the Tube Police. And I'll explain what the Tube Police are in a second. So our story starts off on Termite, the capital planet of a cruel galactic empire. Above ground, it's just a world devastated by nuclear wars. There's just a few poor overlanders, they call them. They eke out a living up there. And we see this couple, Elmer and Maybelline, they're a bunch of hicks from, overlander hicks. And here's the tube, which is basically like a 360-degree highway. You can drive on all the surface of it. And I guess it goes to the surface. And but these overland hicks are traveling down to the big city to visit their daughter. We have as a narrator is this DJ who's doing the traffic news. So Elmer and Maybelline are kind of lost, and then all of a sudden, this Torquemada comes out in his gondola. That's the thing about Nemesis the Warlock, I should mention right off the bat. It's great sci-fi comic, all these cool concepts, great characters, incredibly violent at points, and yet it's tons of humor. I mean, it seems like almost like the raison d'etre of this comic. One day I'll learn how to say that phrase, I promise. Is just to have lots of yucks. But Pat Mills fills the pages with all these great plots and characters, but also just tons of goofy gags and stuff. So we see this is the Outlanders. They're one of Torquemada's Terminators. We'll see later there's like 7 chapters of the Terminators, and the Outlanders are one of them. They're basically like traffic cops, but they have a license to kill. I mean, it's almost like Judge Dredd, They can do whatever they want. But then from a side tunnel, all of a sudden, Nemesis's Blitz Spear comes out. That's Nemesis's craft. And it kind of looks like Nemesis in a stylized way. Man, look at this Kevin O'Neill art. He's just like such a weird imagination. Nobody draws like him. So the Blitzspear is just like ramming through these government ships, causing havoc. And Torquemada, we can tell from his dialogue that he's been trying to get Nemesis forever. He's like public enemy number 1. He's broken a lot of traffic laws. So basically this is just a big chase scene. And then there's this like a black hole overpass or bypass, which is a man-made black hole, and Nemesis escapes down it. All these other cars are going down. And basically this man-made black hole transports you to another part of the galaxy. But before he dives into there, he blows up the central command tower. And so once again, he's escaped the clutches of Torquemada. That's an amazing panel. Look how many ships he draws in there. So now this was the second story. Also, not technically a Nemesis the Warlock story. This was another rock comic or whatever they were called. And they took the title out again. I can't remember the original title. But once again, we're in the travel tubes. And Torquemada is traveling on a tube liner, which is like a train. And then all of a sudden, this overland creature, the Horror Hawk, rips into the tube and grabs the tube liner out like a big worm. It's basically like a half machine, half mutated bird creature. So it flies to its nest on the surface, and it's basically going to feed it to its young. We see the young there. And I guess there's one life bag, which is kind of like an escape pod. And of course, Torquemada takes it. and he finds himself in the wasteland. So he travels to a transmitter station. So this is another mode of transportation in this future, where it's almost like you're beamed across through these wires. You're teleported through these wires, almost like a telegram. So he gets in this ship, and see inside this transporter, everyone's just floating, commuting, to their jobs and stuff. Of course, lots of gags, lots of jokes. I love this surreal little vista here. Torquemada flies over the ghastly sea of lost souls, where an accident has caused people's bodies to become entangled forever in a nightmare sea of neutrons. And just this all these disgusting, repulsive monsters, and these surfers, these like road warrior like surfers, almost like they're escapees from Freak Wave by Milliken and McCarthy. Really great art. And I guess Nemesis in his Blitzspear was waiting under these waves. Look at this, more of this just grotesquerie. And he pops out, and he starts pursuing Torquemada. Their ships are kind of warping. This is pretty cool looking. Because this is almost like another dimension. I don't know how to describe it, the transporter. And so some of those Terminators are going to take out Nemesis, but they fail. So then I guess it's they're running out of time. They have to race this electrical storm and then dial out of the teleport system. But in this weird future, I guess somebody has to accept your call, just like a collect call. So Torquemada calls up the Royal College of Torture, where he was about to give a lecture. And the guy says, "I'm in the middle of a torture. Tell him I'll call him back." So Torquemada's totally trapped, and he dies. But luckily, Nemesis has better friends, and he calls up his friend, who's in basically the resistance. She's a human who is helping out the aliens. And I like this. Nemesis' whole ship is just crashed in her apartment. But inside the teleport system, we find out that Torquemada is not quite dead. He's destroyed. His body is burned, but his consciousness is whole. And of course, he vows revenge against Nemesis. And we see his apparition over the overland. So now we have the first Nemesis, the Warlock proper. And now we get this is going to be the thrust of the series from now on. Torquemada is now the Grand Inquisitor of all of Termite. And I didn't mention, so these stories all take place in Termite, which is basically Earth in the future, Terra. And because the Earth has been nuked to Kingdom Come, and the reason why it's called Termite is the bulk of humanity have burrowed into the Earth, and there's all these tunnels and cities underground. And Torquemada is basically this incredible xenophobic, fascist, kind of racist, if that's what you call it, someone who hates aliens. And so he's basically convinced the whole planet that all aliens are bad and that they have to have an interstellar crusade and just exterminate every single alien in the universe. He's not going to be happy until he does. He wants them all dead. And most of Earth agrees with him. Here we see some termite propaganda. So it's kind of interesting too. This racist crusade against all aliens has almost become the religion, and we see that the social order is kind of based on religious grounds. You know, it's almost like the Inquisition in Spain. So our story begins in one of the fringe worlds. It's a planet called Thrum, and there's all these plant people who live there. And all of a sudden, a ship from Termite shows up, and they know what their MO is. So luckily, these plant people can change. They can alter their form so they can look human. So they tell all the young saplings and the old roots to hide, and then all the adults change into human-like forms so they can trick the humans. But the chief inquisitor of this expedition, he's like, something's fishy here. There's no kids or old people. And he basically tortures one of them. It's almost like in the old days with dunking a witch. And while she's being dunked, because she's almost dead, she reverts back to her alien form. And so the jig is up. And they just massacre all of these poor aliens. After they've killed them all and left, the young saplings and the old roots come out. Look at that. I love that guy. This old root. So the guy who led that expedition, Brother Behel, he returns to Termite, and he plans to make himself Grand Master now that Torquemada is dead. Nobody knows that Torquemada exists in this ghostly form, except for this guy who's like a lackey of Brother Behel. And he says, last night, Torquemada appeared to me in a vision. He lives. And Behel says, quit your ravings. You're nuts. So Behel is meditating in the Great Hall. Look at this. Just more of this crazy Kevin O'Neill design. This is some kind of structure that looks like I don't know, like a tortured monster. He just adds so much crazy business. The architecture, all the stuff in the background. And Torquemada, the spirit of Torquemada appears. And he, using his psychic powers, he pushes Behel into the alien pit, which is a way to dispose of undesirables in the society. They let some aliens live, the scariest aliens, in this pit, and they throw you into it if they want to get rid of you. Look at these horrible grotesqueries here. Look at these guys. And they totally devour Behel. And then Torquemada finally lets himself be known to the public. I guess he can, even though he doesn't really have a corporeal form, he can appear to people, you know. He can be seen. And he takes over as Grandmaster once again. So now we're back in the Great Hall. Torquemada is addressing the different chapters of Terminators. And he's basically saying, we really got to get this Nemesis guy. They call him the arch deviant. So basically, they laid this trap for Nemesis. It's kind of weird how all of these Terminators and Torquemada, it's like they hate aliens, they hate the other so much, and they just think they want everyone to be pure and human. But their masks make them look like total monstrous aliens. Almost all, they get worse, believe me. Like, this just looks like a weird design. But later on, there's like crazy organic shit going on where you can't even tell, like, wait, that's a mask? Except for this guy. This Terminator kind of looks like he's dressing up as Zardoz for Halloween. Looks like the Zardoz head. And so Nemesis pops up, and then all of a sudden, this giant man-o-war ship pops up and shoots Nemesis down. And his ship crash lands on this planet called Earth's End. Look at this great, crazy architecture here. So Earth's End is a community, it's part of the Termite Empire. It's a community of humans. And, they don't like aliens either. Look at this guy, this butcher guy. Just so disgusting. Whatever he's cutting up. Kevin O'Neill is just so good at making things look so gross. So basically the village idiot, this kind of half-wit, he says, I saw a ship land. I think it's Nemesis. There's a huge reward. So everyone in the town has got dollar signs in their eyes, and they're like, let's go get him. We'll all collect the reward money and we'll be rich. See, here's some of there's so much humor in these comics. Like, look how goofy this guy is. And then Nemesis shows up. And it's kind of weird. They start attacking Nemesis. And I don't think he's that wounded, but he doesn't fight back. And they chain him up. They drag him to their town, and they hang him. And they're all thinking about how they're going to spend their reward money. But then on the third night, Nemesis the whole time is just hanging there. And he's not dead. Look at that great. It's such a great design. It's so bizarre. So that on the third night of his hanging, the butcher chops off all of his fingers. Basically, everyone involved in abusing Nemesis, they all meet a horrible fate. This other guy, he gets attacked by this snake, basically hung by the snake. This is weird. This sequence of panels really freaks me out because I don't see any Kevin O'Neill in this. What I do see is P. Craig Russell. I would totally be convinced if you showed me this, that was P. Craig Russell. The coloring, the way he draws the snake, that face, so weird. I mean, definitely not P. Craig Russell now, but like that early 80s P. Craig Russell, like from Night Music. This widow Grundy, she was part of the assault on Nemesis's person. And she wakes up and there's a billion flies in her room. And she basically chokes on them. So then all the townspeople run to Nemesis and say, please leave us alone. We won't harm you again. Here's your armor. Just go. And he just levitates down and goes to his ship and takes off. So let's look at number 2 here. Another great new O'Neill cover done just for this. What is going on here? Whatever it is, it's just gross. It's so gnarly. I don't know if this is a new splash page or just taken from a pinup from 2018. So Purity Brown is part of the handful of humans who don't agree with Torquemada. There's a little resistance. And she's on the run from this Terminator. She's with her friend Googly. Googly's very goofy looking. So this little short is pretty much like a big long chase scene. We see some cool sci-fi ideas. Like I guess in these underground cities, you can just slide down buildings. There's some kind of magma seal, magma painted surface. So basically you can go in any direction you want, almost like an M.C. Escher painting. God, Man, Kevin O'Neill, such an imagination. There's Googly. What a goon. So the Terminator keeps chasing them. They're trying to reach Sanctuary. That's a little place deep underground where, the Resistance is safe. So they finally make it to Sanctuary, and then all of a sudden, Googly starts choking and coughing, and then the spirit of Torquemada rises from him. Apparently, he's possessed Googly all this time. Purity, this is Purity Brown, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. She had no idea, and so they the tormentors show up, and they round up all of the rebels. Now we have an interlude. Interlude 1. We see this brother Gogol. He's an executioner of Terminus. He's basically like the right-hand guy to Torquemada. He's killed many aliens, hates aliens, just like most people on the planet. And he's looking in the bestiary. So because they hate aliens so much, they have these illuminated manuscripts bound in alien hide that describe every alien. So Earthlings know what to look for. And Brother Gogol's been freaking out lately because his body's been changing, and he finds what he is turning into, a grotesque. So somehow he's half alien. His whole life he looked normal, but in his adult life, all of a sudden he starts changing. Of course, this is horrifying to him. He hides it from his wife. Nobody knows yet. He's terrified that Torquemada will find out. And Nemesis shows up in his apartment. And he basically says, I want to make you a deal. I guess these half-alien hybrids are called mandrakes in this society. Here we kind of get, this is like Nemesis's Green Lantern oath. He's got this little thing he says every now and then. I am the Nemesis, I am the Warlock, I am the shape of things to come, the Lord of the Flies, holder of the sword sinister. Now we have interlude number 2. And Nemesis is on his way to a remote planet in the Fringe Worlds to visit his great uncle Baal. He's a noted sorcerer. His life's mission is to find the essence of human evil, which he does by chopping up humans and dissecting them. I guess his work was considered just too out there for even the Warlocks, and he's been banished to this planet. But he continues his experiments. Just look at all this stuff that Kevin O'Neill does. This great chair of a human skeleton. I don't know what the hell that is, but it's disgusting. All this gross stuff all over. It's just like Bill Elder, but really gross. Oh, man. So, Baal has a familiar named Grobendonk, and he speaks this alien language called gibberish, which kind of sounds like Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky, the way he talks. It's just all nonsense, but it almost has this like nice poetry to it. So Nemesis shows up. Man, I like the coloring there, the lightning behind Nemesis. Once again, Kevin O'Neill colors. And Baal is not too happy to see him. In fact, Nemesis was crucial in his exile, was instrumental in getting his great uncle exiled. And he basically says, I need something of yours. And so Baal tries to poison Nemesis. And Grobendonk actually whispers in Nemesis' ear and tells him what's up. I guess he doesn't like work, Ball very much. And so Nemesis switches the glasses back. So Ball drinks the knockout pills and falls asleep. And so then Nemesis leaves, and he takes Grobendonk with him. And he steals some of his magic books. End of interlude. Now we're back in Necropolis. That's one of the big cities underground in Termite. And we're at the Temple of Terminus, which is where, this is like the headquarters of the Terminators. Did I say Tormentors earlier? Sorry, the Terminators. And Nemesis shows up and starts attacking the Terminators. Nemesis is really handy with his sword Sinister. And so he finds Gogol again. And basically he says, we find out what he's going to make him do. Because basically he has a deal with Gogol. He says, I'll tell Torquemada that you're an alien. But I won't if you do this thing for me. So I guess the next day is this big religious holiday. And during this thing, they're going to kill all of the rebels that they found in Sanctuary. They're going to make them jump into this flame. Nemesis is forced Gogol to put a dimensional doorway under that flame. It'll be unseen. So when all of the rebels jump in the flame, they'll just be transported safely to another place. Oh, it's called the Feast of Zamarkand. Here we see those 7 chapters of the Tormentors: the Inquisition, the New Druids, Dervishes, Outriders, Assassins, Dark Brethren, and Berserkers. They all sound really interesting. Like Pat Mills just stuffs his comics with all these neat concepts. It's like, oh man, I want to find out about the Dervishes. So, I guess there's this musical instrument that is part of the ceremony played by this guy. He's the Pandemonium player. That's the name of the instrument. And Nemesis kills him and takes his robes and impersonates him. So it's the big day. This is the Pandemonium. And Nemesis is playing it unknown to anyone there. Not only is this an amazing drawing here, but he does this amazing panel shit on the side. Just these great little illustrations. And the spirit of Torquemada is towering over everyone. And so I guess one by one, they're all going to have to jump in the fire. They're going to have to repent or not, and then jump in the fire. Purity Brown is the first one. And Nemesis, his voice pops in her head and says, "The flames are your gateway to freedom. Do not be afraid." So she jumps in. And Nemesis tells every other rebel that before they jump in. So they're not even scared. And the Terminators are kind of pissed off. It's like, it's no fun unless they're afraid. And then all of a sudden, the Terminators start going crazy. Because Nemesis is playing the Pandemonium. He's changed the tune. And the Terminators all see each other as aliens and they start killing each other. I love that. It's like the abominable Dr. Phibes there. That's a great panel too. Look at that. Meanwhile, Grobendonk, Nemesis is now familiar, is heading to the lower steps of the alien pits, and he's going to free all the aliens. Once again, look how disgusting this is. This is like a young torturer in training. But God, that's so nasty. Once again, just a lot of gags. This whole thing is put in just for, humor's sake. And so Grabadang steals the keys, takes them to the cell, and we'll see this guy a bunch of times. His name's Kremlin. He's like a little imp, like a little dwarf or elf, and all of his little underlings are called like Pushkin and Vladivostok. They all have Russian names for some reason. Well, most of them do. So they're all freed. Then gratefully trample Grabadang. And then this one guy is an invisible alien. His name's Incognito. And now we just have another little interlude, this little story. This story is going to be put on hold until the next issue. And this is Nemesis and the Origin of the Excessus. That's the name of his sword. And we see a prison where these rebels are awaiting their fate. And one of them tells a story. He says, "Let me tell you the story of Excessus." So I guess on the surface of Termite, there was this lowly Vark herd. These are Varks. So he was like a shepherd, but for Varks, a Vark herd. And then one day, Torquemada approached him. And he said, "You are the one known as Ulrich." And he says, "Don't be afraid." He says, you are the only descendant of this certain warrior. So you're the only person who can wield the sword sinister, Excessus. So basically, he sends him on a quest. He says, "You must get the sword." And it's like it takes him 10 years. Basically, we see all of this as his adventures over the years. He loses a leg. He goes through all these travails, goes to all these different planets, fights all these repulsive monsters, all to find this sword. So finally, he's very close. And the last creature he has to fight to get to the sword is this guy named, I think his name's Gorebelly. Look at this. Only Kevin O'Neill could come up with this fucking, look at this weird robot. It's got a mouth in its stomach, just shoving stuff in. And it's got this other little mouth with teeth. His head looks like a teapot or coffee mug with flame coming out of it. Even the feet are interesting, the way those toes come out. Just really neat looking design work. So finally, after all these years, he finds, Ulrich finds the sword, Excessus. But he's tired though, after all this, after this huge journey. And he puts down the sword for a second. And meanwhile, we see a hand grab Excessus, and it's Nemesis. And he kills him. So after all that shit he went through. So that's the story, how Nemesis got his sword. Now we got number 3. Another beautiful Kevin O'Neill cover. Nemesis the Warlock versus Torquemada. What? Look at this. It's this bridge. And the bridge towers are just these weird fucking sculptures of these mutants. Kevin O'Neill must be a strange guy. So now we're back to the story. Nemesis is fighting the tormentors. The tormentors, they're crazed, so they're fighting anyone. So they start fighting Nemesis. He's got to cut him down. We see Kremlin again. That's a great little humorous drawing there. That's great, funny cartooning. And then all the escaped aliens join the fray, start killing tormentors left and right. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. What the hell is that? And so then Torquemada starts popping into the dead tormentors' bodies. One he actually orders to kill himself so he can jump into his body. And all the rebels are slowly escaping, and a bunch of the aliens, too, are escaping into that dimensional portal. Nemesis has to shove some of them in because they're too scared. They don't believe him. And Gogol finally confronts Torquemada. It's weird how much plot is going on, this climactic fight scene. And yet, every other panel, he just slows down to have a goofy gag, to throw in some joke or funny bit of business. So now finally, Torquemada, in one of his Terminators, confronts Nemesis. There's some more of this craziness. And the epic battle begins. It's a pretty close fight, but Nemesis finally wins. I do want to point out, like, if you look at League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which Kevin O'Neill colors his own art, and those colors are stunning. I think Kevin O'Neill was new to coloring at this point. He had only worked at 2000 AD. Because these colors they remind me of the 80s DC comics when they first got the offset printing. They didn't really know how to color with this new system yet. And that's what this reminds me of. Just these like lots of pinks and washed out, whatever you call that when you don't color everything individually. You just do a color wash over everything. Too much of that. Especially with such detailed art, you don't want to see that. So Torquemada just keeps jumping to other dead Terminators' bodies. So he's like, eventually you're going to tire, Nemesis. And he is. But Nemesis keeps getting the best of him, and he just jumps into another body. That's a pretty impressive page there. And then a giant Terminator ship comes in. They're just strafing the aliens while they sing their theme song. It's so ridiculous. It's basically like, we are the Terminators. And due to all of this ruckus, the roof caves in. More aliens are escaping from the pit. It's just total chaos. And through it all, Nemesis and Torquemada are still engaged in their battle to the death. So I guess Nemesis weaves a spell so he can't jump into another body. And on the psychic plane, He says, on the physical plane, we were well matched, but on the psychic plane, you are at my mercy. And Torquemada goes, ah! I am the master now. But then the building starts collapsing even more. This giant rock shatters the bridge they're on. So Torquemada takes advantage of the confusion to escape. And he says, Nemesis says, I've got to go after him. And one of the aliens says, no, we gotta get out of here. Don't let your personal vendetta, get in the way of our mission. Look at this dude. He's got this weird fucking stumpy arm with a mouth that talks. So bizarre. You guys probably know the story how Kevin O'Neill is the only artist in comic book history to be banned by the Comics Code, not for what he drew, just how he draws. There was a Green Lantern story. The Comics Code rejected it. They were like, maybe it's this little thing that's kind of violent. We'll take it out. They sent it back. The Comics Code rejected it again. They said, no, it's just the way that guy draws. It's just so disgusting that it's against the Comics Code. I'm sure Kevin O'Neill wears it as a badge of pride. I would. That's pretty amazing. So basically, Torquemada, he's still alive, his spirit, but he's getting weaker and weaker. And one of his acolytes, one of his clergy, basically, he says, your spirit risks fade out. You have to go to the Vestal vampires. They need to replenish you. Or you'll just fade out for all time. But he just wants to get Nemesis so bad he doesn't care. So Nemesis is about to jump into the portal, but he runs back to help this little alien. And Torquemada shoots him with this kind of spear gun thing. And Nemesis is, has leaped for the portal, but he's hanging from this chain connected to the spear. And Nemesis yanks at it and pulls him down. So Nemesis makes it through the portal just as it closes, which means that since Torquemada is 10 feet behind him, he burns in the sacrificial fire that they intended to kill all the rebels with. Love that panel, him burning up. And as he's turning into nothingness, he says, I will return. He's basically trying to say. So Nemesis makes it through the portal. A few days later, he's all healed up. And we see that they're in the Waterloo subway station, tube station. So I guess the rebels hang out deeper in the planet. It's the forbidden level. So Nemesis is rejoicing in their victory. He says, guys, I'm going to return you all to your planets. And I guess there's an interstellar group called the Cabal. And that's basically all the aliens. It's like the United Nations of the aliens. And the Cabal is the main force trying to stop the termites from taking over everything and killing everyone. And then Nemesis takes off with his blitz spear. And Purity Brown looks like she's crying. I think she loves Nemesis. Once again, not only these panels great, but he does this cool border illustration stuff. So that's the end of the first big story. Now we have a little short. Torquemada, Grandmaster of Termite, and we see a little family album here. There's his mother, his wife, his 2 kids, and his grandfather. Quite a bunch there. So now we have a day in the death of Torquemada. So Torquemada just doesn't die. He's still a spirit. And he basically commands his best warrior to come see him so he can kill him or kill himself. And then Torquemada can take over his, great, strong body. And he goes to visit the scribes who make the bestiaries, the illuminated manuscripts. And then he heads to the travel tubes in his gondola. And he heads to his winter palace, deep in the bowels of the earth. Once again, this is his house. Looks like this. Turn on as a net. And he says, "I'm home, dear. How are the kids?" So he's like a normal dad when he comes home. And he brought a present for his wife, her very own bestiary. And he says, "This is the most feared alien of all, Nemesis Warlock." And that's how the 3rd issue ends. And the next episode, I will show you number 4 through 7 of this 7-issue Necro series, as they deemed it. Pretty stupid title. I guess it was, back then they had micro series, so they decided to call it Necro series. Hope you guys like looking at these. I'm kind of bummed that I actually thought I owned one of those omnibuses in black and white, chronological order, that Rebellion put out in the 2000s. I have the Road Trooper ones. I have Bad Company. I thought I had Nemesis The Warlock for sure. And I looked at my shelves, and all I have are these reprints with the kind of ant coloring. And, things are chopped up. It's not the pure original comics. So that is my next holy grail. I got to get that complete Nemesis. Because, this is just scratching the surface. The 7 issues we're going to look at here. It went on for years. Many different artists. And Brian Talbot's early work was on these. Just a lot of great artists. And Pat Mills writing the whole thing. And writing it well. So one day I'll get that. But in the meantime, this is what I got. So I'm going to show these off. And I guess whenever I buy that book, these will be kicked out of the Academy. And I'll let you know. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed watching it. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.